All right, as you take that sip, I'm going to hit you with just a gut check. And I think you're going to like talking about this, and definitely going to be a segment for the people to also respond on. I'm just going to drop the question, and we'll discuss. So, will Call of Duty League fail?
What do you mean by fail?
Okay, now this is a very broad question, because
yes,
I think a lot of people out there ultimately would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What is failure, right? That needs to be defined. And, I think let's do in the perspective of this. Let's make it a fair statement. Will Call of Duty League fail in the next 3 years? Will it be no longer a part of the esports scene? Because I think that's actually a trickier question that is up front. Will it ultimately fail? Will it ultimately fail? What we see with Overwatch, I think, does not allude very well for Call of Duty on several bounds. So. But, again, we're on the esports side. It surviving helps us. We want it to, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I love Call of Duty personally. I have not loved the past few entries, what they've done, but I adore that franchise so much. I just want it to succeed. But
yes.
They seem to be...
So will it survive? Will this franchise league survive the next 3 years? When it comes time for 2023, will Call of Duty League still be here?
Okay, here's what I think. I think it'll make it to 2023 simply because of all the people who are putting money into it, right? I don't think they're going to allow it to fail, because if it does, that just means they wasted tons of time, tons of money, tons of people are out of a job, right? So I think we'll at least see it go through 2023. Now, 5 years from now...
That's more of a question?
Yeah, I think we're going to see them drop the franchise league concept, to be honest, and just go back to something a little bit more open and free. Because honestly, they're having so many issues right now. They clearly don't know what they're doing. They rushed this, is what it feels like.
And I think that's the most terrible part, because we've heard it several times from Hector's podcast and other people out there, from pro players too. It's very weird, because this is the kind of game, these games are in development for a couple of years before they release.
Right.
It just so happened this game was set to be, and without some people knowing it when they first started making the game, this was set to be the first Call of Duty League game. And I think we have issues on a lot of fronts. Obviously, the teams and the money are there. The players are there. But then you have both Activision and IW. When it comes to Activision pushing out a game, and IW themselves as well, pushing a game which is, I would say, severely lacking in a lot of facets and a lot of manners out there. And I do agree that some people are overwhelmingly just too negative about this. But I think if you're open to looking at the thing from outside perspective, there are obviously a lot of issues that kind of correlate to what Overwatch is going through. And so when I see this and I see Overwatch struggling 3 years in, to ask myself the same question, I think you made a really good point. There is so much money in it.
Yeah,
maybe we don't
too much.
Maybe we don't see where that money is going necessarily. It seems still like a very high ticket price to get into the league.
Certainly not at venues. I mean, shout out to the parking garage crew.
The opening weekend, this past weekend, obviously this podcast is pre-recorded, looked a bit interesting, and we don't know the details. As of right now, us recording this, we didn't see how it went down, so we don't know those details. But obviously there's a lot of fronts where this league is struggling, and it's definitely going to be a big concern. And I think a lot of people out there who can be honest with themselves cannot say this is going to be just as successful as LEC or LCS or League of Legends. And I think ultimately where my concern comes from, and again, bouncing off your point, these leagues with all of their money and investment and people who need them to work, they will work for a time, but them not working long-term is where you start to question, how do we take back all of this and still move forward afterwards?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the question here. And I feel like there's a lot of very smart people who have put their, who have backed this league, who have said, hey, we've seen the numbers, we think it's going to be successful, right? Like, I think Hex, that man's a genius, right? Like, Gary Vee, obviously very intelligent, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I almost feel like they're looking too much at Call of Duty as an overall brand, because Call of Duty as a brand, I think, will probably always be successful, despite all of the times that it stumbles and falls and all the community backlash and everything. Call of Duty is probably always going to be in the top 5 best-selling games of whatever year it comes out in.
Yes, they will make money for the next dozen years.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily apply to the franchised scene.
Yes.
Especially not with the way they're running it. I think in this kind of type of circumstance, one of the most important things is establishing a relationship of trust in between the players competing in the league, the fans watching, and hopefully the teams and the owners as well. Because right now, I think I'm in a place, and a lot of other people as well from what I've seen online, where we see all these people saying, hey, trust us, it's fine, it'll work, when very specifically with Call of Duty games, time and time again, the developers have lied, like outright, about what's going on with the game. They've very specifically taken on very predatory practices. We've seen the executives, as certain publishers, developers say very blatantly, we just want money.
And Activision is very good at making money.
Yeah, they're very good at making money, but also they're very good at running stuff into the ground. Do you remember Guitar Hero?
I mean,
that was the most successful music franchise ever, and Activision was just like, oh, well, more.
To be honest, I didn't even know they had ties to it.
That was their game, and they ran it into the ground when it could have probably still been successful now. And I just hope we don't see something similar with them continuing to try and force Call of Duty upon people.
I think this is going to be such an interesting next 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely.
And there's so many talking points here, but we'll close it shortly. So when it comes to the 3-year question, I think neither of us say it's going to fail. So we both agree it's not going to fail. The 5-year question mark certainly an overlying mystery. But when it comes time for is franchise league the right move, it's gonna come a time years down the line where we're gonna find out if it is or not, because we still have League of Legends. I would say is the only successful franchise model right now.
Even League of Legends isn't really a franchise model. It's kind of like a hybrid franchise where it's not like I think part of the problem with Overwatch and Call of Duty is they're trying to lock it to cities and they're trying to make it like a traditional sport.
The home and away events are not only killing the players for we've seen the travel issues with Overwatch, but then you rely on the orgs or the teams to put on these events, which we are already seeing very early on can be a heavy weight on a lot of the organizations who also have Overwatch teams. Meanwhile, you have a publisher who is making money out the wazoo, who could be putting on the events themselves.
Yeah, for real.
They've done it in the past.
It'd be so easy. They have so much money.
Ironically, the first Activision event we talked about or I guess it was the first one of this Modern Warfare. It was last year though. It didn't include any Call of Duty people besides some streamers. So
I don't know what they're doing. I think if I was at Activision and my move was I want this to be a successful esports league, right? I would say, hey, let's just throw a couple $100 million at it, right? They can afford to do that.
Not even that much off not off the start, but eventually.
Well, if they're trying to force it like this, because obviously it's rushed, it's to try and make it work, to force it to work, throwing money at the problem could help.
Yes, sometimes it's so weird to me because when it comes time for who makes the most off their game, Epic Games is up there. Yeah. Activision is right up there as well. They make a lot of money. What do you see Epic Games doing? They throw money at TOs and separate events, some of which they have hands behind, but some of which they don't. They haven't gone towards a franchise model and not necessarily a competitive esport to do so. But like you said, they patch a lot of their problems by just throwing cash at it.
No, yeah, and it works.
And it's so weird that the reverse is now the thing with Call of Duty where teams are throwing cash at Activision. Can you imagine if Epic Games announced a franchise league and they have all this money and now organizations are throwing all of this again at them? We've seen the exact opposite with Call of Duty. We have orgs throwing it at Activision. Meanwhile, in Fortnite, they're just dumping it out. They make it a lot, but they're at least they're giving a lot of it back.
I think Epic Games is in a place where since Fortnite is so new, maybe this is them coming in from the outside and looking at esports objectively. Because if you think about what is a purpose of a game as an esport, it's to market the game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's to advertise and bring viewers to. It's a circle. You bring viewers into the game, they watch the pros and want to play more, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I feel like this league is just making Call of Duty look bad, as a game at base level.
That's a really good point. I think having this franchise league so far be under so many scopes, it's only further identified all of the underlying issues with the game, which then hurts sales. That's a really good point to make. And, them amongst everyone else, Call of Duty League is under the biggest scope right now. And you are certainly right. Over the past 2 months, there have been so many issues highlighted across the board.
More than ever, I feel like. And I have friends who don't even pay attention to this news, who are just like, yeah, this slide cancel thing. And I'm like, my guy, what? Where did you hear about that?
And then you think about, for COD to survive, we'll end on this. For COD to survive 3 or 5 more years, they got to develop 3 or 5 more games. And if one gets worse than Modern Warfare, if it somehow does, which
there's a really good chance.
There is a chance because we've already talked about bad games before.
Yeah.
And certainly it can get worse. We both agree it will last 3 years. The 5 is a giant question. What do you guys think? Again, we want this to work. As of right now, the issues, though, they are just coming day after day.